Hi, I'm Kaylin. I came home from work one night to find my baby crying in the pouring rain, soaked, shivering, abandoned on the porch. My own mother stood in the doorway and said, "I don't raise bastards." My sister? She laughed. That night, I ran barefoot into the storm with my son in my arms, and what happened next still makes me shake when I think about it. Before we dive in, what time are you listening to this, and where are you? Drop a comment below, and tell me, what would you have done if it were you in my place? The rain had already soaked through my diner uniform by the time I stepped off the bus. It was one of those Alabama storms that made the air feel heavy, where each raindrop slapped your skin like it had something personal against you. My feet hurt from a double shift, and all I could think about was getting home, peeling off my wet clothes and holding Callan. But when I turned the corner to our street, my heart stopped. There he was. My baby, my little boy, sitting on the front porch steps, wrapped in that yellow knit blanket I'd made with my own hands during those sleepless nights of pregnancy, now soaked through like a rag left in the gutter. His tiny face was red, his cries swallowed by the pounding rain. For a second, I couldn't move. Then my bag slipped from my shoulder, hitting the ground with a splash, and I ran. "Kaylin!" My voice cracked as I scooped him up, his small body trembling against my chest. He was freezing, drenched to the bone. My hands were shaking as I pulled that blanket tighter, as if my love alone could make up for the cold and the neglect. "Mama's here, baby. I've got you. I've got you." And then I heard her voice. "Well, look who decided to come home." I turned. My mother stood in the doorway, arms crossed, that same scowl she wore when I was 12 and brought home a report card with one C. Marvette. The name alone carried weight in this house, but not the good kind. "What the hell, Mama?" I shouted over the rain. "How could you leave him out here? He's a baby! My baby!" Her expression didn't change. "I told you, Kaylin," she said, her voice cool and cutting, like we were discussing trash left out too long. "I don't raise bastards. You brought shame into my house. Now live with it." The words sliced deeper than the rain ever could. And then Thessaly appeared, leaning against the doorframe like she owned the place. My older sister. Perfect Thessaly, with her flawless hair and smirk that could curdle milk. "Serves you right," she said, her voice dripping with satisfaction. "You filthy little whore." I blinked through the rain, disbelief giving way to fury. "He's your nephew, Thess. He's a baby." She tilted her head, unbothered. "You should have thought of that before you spread your legs for some nobody." Actions have consequences. My face burned. It wasn't the first time they'd tried to break me. But this was different. They didn't just reject me, they rejected my son. I tightened my hold on Kaylin, his tiny fingers gripping my shirt as if he knew I was the only safe thing left in his world. "Get out," Marvette said simply, like she was asking me to pass the salt. My jaw dropped. "What? You want to raise that child? Do it somewhere else, not under my roof, not in my house." "I have nowhere else to go." My voice cracked, but I wasn't pleading for myself. It was for Kaylin. "He's just a baby. You don't have to do this." But she'd already turned away. Thessaly's laugh followed her, sharp and mocking, and then, slam. The door closed in my face. The porch light went out. It was just me, my son, and the storm. For a moment I stood frozen, raindrops mingling with the tears I wouldn't let fall. All those years of trying to earn a place in this family, of hoping that one day I wouldn't be the disappointment. And here I was, barefoot, shut out. With nothing but my child in my arms and the yellow blanket between us and the world. I whispered into his damp hair, "I've got you, baby. Mama's here. We'll be okay." I didn't believe it yet, but I had to make him believe it. I stepped off the porch, my feet sinking into puddles, my body running on pure instinct. I didn't know where I was going. Just away. Away from that house, those voices, that pain. Streetlights blurred in the rain, glowing halos over empty streets. Each step felt heavier than the last, but I kept moving. And then came the blinding headlights. I barely had time to turn my body, curling around Kaylin as the sound of screeching tires tore through the storm. The impact was sudden, violent. My breath left my body as I hit the asphalt, pain radiating from my side, my arms locked tight around my baby. I didn't let go of him. Through the pain, through the rain, I only felt his tiny fingers clinging to me. The last thing I saw before everything went black was a shadow bending over me, rain dripping from his sleeves, his voice loud and urgent, calling my name like he knew me. When I opened my eyes again, the world felt too bright. The rain was gone, replaced by harsh fluorescent lights that hummed above me. For a moment, I didn't know where I was, or why my body felt heavy, each breath like it belonged to someone else. Then it hit me like a punch to the chest. Kaylin! I tried to sit up, the room spinning so hard I nearly collapsed back against the pillow. My ribs ached, my head throbbed, but none of that mattered. Where's my baby? My voice cracked, desperation scraping my throat. He's right here. A deep, steady voice cut through the fog, pulling my attention to the corner of the room. And there he was, my Kaylin. My little boy was sleeping in a clear bassinet beside me, swaddled tight in a dry blanket, his yellow blanket. That stupid, precious blanket I thought I'd ruined when I dragged him into the storm. He was warm, safe, his tiny chest rising and falling like none of the nightmare outside had touched him. Relief flooded me so hard it burned. My hands trembled as I reached out, letting my fingers brush against his soft, bundled form. Tears came before I could stop them. Not the ugly sobs I'd learned to choke back over the years, but quiet, exhausted tears that slipped out anyway. You're awake. I turned toward the voice. The man in the corner wasn't what I expected. He wasn't a cop or a doctor or some random passerby. He looked deliberate. Mid-30s, tall, with dark hair combed back like he actually cared about appearances, though his rolled-up sleeves and scuffed, rain-soaked shoes told another story. He sat like someone who didn't quite belong here, but wasn't leaving until he was sure I was okay. I'm Donovan, he said simply, standing and moving closer. I'm the one who hit you. The words landed hard, but before I could react, he added, But I couldn't leave you there. You and your baby are safe now. My voice came out thin. Why would you stay? He didn't hesitate. Because no one should be lying in the rain with a baby in their arms. I stared at him, unsure what to make of him. He didn't look like the kind of man who stopped for strangers in the middle of a storm. He looked like the kind of man who drove past, too busy, too important. But here he was. Before I could ask anything else, a doctor walked in, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes who spoke with the kind of practiced calm people in pain, hate, and need at the same time. Kaylin, she said, glancing at the chart in her hand. You've got a mild concussion and some bruised ribs. No broken bones. You're lucky. And your son, he's perfectly fine. Perfectly fine. I wanted to believe it. But my mind kept replaying everything. My mother's voice, sharp and cold, calling me a disgrace. Thessaly's laugh cutting deeper than any words. The feel of Kaylin's trembling body in my arms as I stepped into the street. The doctor left after giving a few instructions. I barely heard them. You're covering the bill? I finally asked, noticing a slip of paper on the counter that definitely wasn't mine. Donovan shrugged. It's taken care of. I didn't ask you to do that. He met my gaze evenly. You don't owe me anything. This is just what's right. I didn't know how to answer that. I wasn't used to kindness without a price. I watched him for a long moment, trying to place him. His clothes, his composure. He wasn't just some good Samaritan. He came from a world I'd only seen from the outside, through screens or passing by houses I'd never step into. You said your name was Donovan? Donovan Brooks. The name sounded like it belonged on an office door or in the kind of news article that praised people I'd never meet. Do you have somewhere to go? He asked after a pause. I laughed, bitter and soft. If I did, I wouldn't have been there in the first place. He hesitated like he knew what I'd say next but didn't want to push. I have a guest house. It's empty. It's safe. You and your boy could stay there, just until you figure out your next step. I blinked at him, my brain fighting the words. A guest house. Safe. Those things didn't exist in my world. You don't even know me, I said. His expression softened, like he understood more than I was saying. Maybe, but I know what it's like to need someone to see you. I wanted to tell him no. I wanted to cling to the scraps of independence I'd been fighting for since the day I realized my family didn't care if I sank or swam. But instead, I looked at Kaylin, sleeping peacefully in that bassinet, and thought about the cold porch, the slammed door, the laughter that chased me into the storm. My voice was barely a whisper. I don't know why I want to say yes. Maybe because it's the first time someone actually sees me. When I nodded, hesitant and small, I didn't know I had just changed the course of my life, and I didn't expect his idea of a guest house to look like something out of a magazine. The next morning, Donovan drove me and Kaylin out of the city, the rain-washed streets giving way to winding roads flanked by tall oaks dripping with leftover stormwater. My ribs still ached with every bump, but Kaylin slept soundly in his car seat beside me, oblivious to the world. I kept my hand on his tiny chest the whole way, as if my touch could keep him safe. When the car slowed, I thought we'd reached the wrong place. The driveway stretched endlessly, lined with lantern posts and perfectly trimmed hedges. At the end of it stood a sprawling house, no, an estate, that looked like something from a glossy magazine cover. White columns, wraparound porches, windows that gleamed like they had their own light. And beside it, tucked into a corner surrounded by azalea bushes, sat the so-called guest house. It was bigger than any place I'd ever lived. Donovan parked and stepped out, grabbing Kaylin's diaper bag before I could. Come on, he said gently. You'll like it. I followed him, my sneakers squeaking against the wet stone path. My heart pounded, not from fear, but from the overwhelming sense that I didn't belong here. Inside, the guest house smelled of soft vanilla and fresh linens. 2 bedrooms, both made up with fluffy white comforters, a kitchen stocked with more food than I'd seen in weeks, and sunlight pouring in through spotless windows. There were fresh towels in the bathroom, even baby soap by the sink. This can't be for people like me, I blurted before I could stop myself. Donovan glanced at me, one eyebrow raised. People like you? You mean people who deserve a safe place? I opened my mouth to answer, but nothing came out. He set Kaylin's bag on the couch, gave me a small nod, and left me to breathe. Not long after, a woman appeared at the door. Kaylin, right? She asked, stepping inside like she owned the place. She was older, in her late 50s maybe, with short silver hair and a kind of confidence that came from knowing everyone in a room would listen to her. I'm Harriet. I keep this place running when Donovan's too busy to remember people don't live on black coffee and takeout. She helped me unpack Kaylin's things, chatting like she'd known me for years. When she noticed I wasn't saying much, she paused and gave me a look that cut right through my walls. If you're waiting for the catch, honey, there isn't one, she said, her southern drawl warm but firm. Donovan doesn't do charity. He does decency. Her words settled somewhere deep in my chest, in the place where suspicion had been gnawing. By evening, Donovan came back carrying groceries and a bag full of diapers and baby wipes. Figured you might need these, he said casually, setting them on the counter. I stared at the bags, then at him. Why are you doing this? He leaned against the counter, arms crossed. because once someone gave me a hand when I had nothing, and I promised myself I'd pay it forward. That was the first time I saw him differently, not as a man who pitied me, but as someone who'd been in the trenches too. That night, after Kalen finally fell asleep, I stood by the window, holding his yellow blanket. It smelled like hospital detergent now, but it still carried the weight of last night, the porch, the rain, my mother's voice echoing in my head like a curse I couldn't shake. You brought shame into my house. Even here, in a place that felt like a dream, those words clung to me. Donovan stopped by before leaving for the night. He noticed me by the window and said quietly, "One day, you're going to realize you deserve more than survival, Kalen." I wanted to believe him, I really did, but all I could do was nod. For the first time in months, Kalen slept soundly. I wish I could say I did too. But the past has a way of clawing back, even when you think you've left it behind. 2 weeks passed at Donovan's guest house, and for the first time in years, my life felt like it had a rhythm. I woke up to Kalen's little squeals, made coffee in a kitchen that didn't smell like mildew, and worked shifts at the diner to bring in some cash. Donovan checked in every few days, not hovering, just making sure we were okay. Harriet would pop by with groceries or fuss over Kalen, calling him the little gentleman. It wasn't perfect, but it was peace, or at least the closest thing I'd known. One evening, after work, I sat on the floor with Kalen as he rolled on a blanket in the living room. That same yellow knit blanket, washed, mended, but still holding pieces of that night, spread out under him like a bridge between then and now. He giggled, kicking his little feet, and I let myself smile. For a fleeting moment, I believed we were safe. But peace has a short shelf life when your family decides you don't deserve it. It was a Wednesday morning, the diner's slowest shift of the week. I was refilling coffee at table 4 when I felt it, that tightness in my chest, like instinct warning me to turn around. I didn't have to. I heard her voice first. "So this is what you've been reduced to?" I turned, and there she was. My mother, standing just inside the door in her church lady best, Thessaly glued to her side like a shadow. Marvette's eyes swept the place like it smelled bad. "Slinging hash like some charity case," Thessaly smirked. "Guess the rich man didn't marry you yet." I froze, the coffee pot heavy in my hand. Every pair of eyes in the diner felt like they were on me. My coworker Marty glanced at me, but he didn't step in. No one ever did. I swallowed hard and set the pot down. "You need to leave." My voice was low, almost steady. Marvette raised a brow. "Leave? Oh no, darling. We came to remind you. You owe us for ruining this family's name. Don't think hiding behind some man changes that." My hands trembled as I wiped them on my apron. "You left my son in the rain," I said, quieter than I intended. Her lips curled. "And I'd do it again. Better than letting you ruin us all." The words cut deeper than I expected. Thessaly laughed, a sharp, cruel sound that made my stomach twist, and the two of them turned like they had finished their work, strutting out as if they'd won something. I made it to the bathroom before my knees gave out. Locking the door, I slid to the floor, silent tears streaking my face. All I could hear was Donovan's voice in my head. "You deserve more than survival." But in that moment, survival still felt like all I could manage. By the time I got home, I had convinced myself I could hide it, pretend it was just another bad day at work. But Donovan noticed. He always did. "You're quiet," he said that evening, leaning against the guest house doorway. "Rough shift?" "Just a bad day," I lied, forcing a weak smile. He didn't push, just waited. The quiet made my chest ache until the words tumbled out. "They came to the diner, my mom, Thessaly. My throat closed up. She said she'd do it again. Leave him out there. Like my son doesn't even matter. Donovan's jaw tightened. They only have power if you keep letting them take pieces of you, he said, his voice even but firm. I didn't answer. But that night, staring at the ceiling while Kaylin slept peacefully beside me, those words carved themselves into me. That night, I realized silence hadn't kept me safe. It had only made me easier to hurt. Now, the more I thought about his words, the more I knew he was right. I couldn't survive like this forever, but knowing something and acting on it are two very different things. I spent that night staring at the ceiling, Kaylin curled up on my chest, the yellow blanket draped over us like armor too thin to keep out the cold reality of what my mother had said. You owe us for ruining this family's name. The words looped in my mind, louder than the hum of the guest house's heater, louder than the occasional wind outside. I kept thinking, if they can walk into my life whenever they want and tear me apart, am I really safe here? Or anywhere? When the morning sun finally peeked through the blinds, I felt like I hadn't slept at all. I shuffled to the kitchen, setting Kaylin in his bouncer while I tried to convince myself to eat something. Donovan was already there, leaning casually against the counter like he belonged in every room he entered. He didn't say anything at first, just looked at me, his expression soft but observant. You look like you've been up all night, he said finally. I gave a humorless laugh. That obvious? He didn't smile. What's eating at you? I sat across from him, picking at a piece of toast. You don't understand. They'll never stop. They'll keep coming, keep pushing, until I break, or give them what they want. His gaze didn't waver. Then you need to stop them. I blinked. You make it sound so simple. It's not, he admitted. But you can't keep living like you're waiting for the next blow. You have rights, Kaylin. If you want, I can give you my lawyer's number. Just talk to him. No strings attached. The words hung between us. I wanted to tell him I wasn't ready, that I didn't want to owe anyone more than I already did. Instead, I nodded slowly, tucking the idea away for later. Later came faster than I expected. The next day, I strapped Kaylin into his stroller and walked to the Birmingham Public Library. The cold air bit at my face, but it felt good, like it cleared some of the fog in my head. Inside, the quiet hum of the library felt almost sacred. I sat at one of the computers with Kaylin beside me and typed in words I never thought I'd search. Protective orders in Alabama, custody rights for single mothers, how to stop family harassment. It felt strange, empowering even, to be learning instead of just reacting. Each article, each legal term I tried to make sense of, felt like a tiny shield forming around me and my son. Maybe, I thought, I could build a life where they couldn't touch us. That night, after I put Kaylin to sleep, I stared at my phone for nearly 20 minutes before typing a message I never imagined sending. Don't come near me or my son again. This is your only warning. My fingers trembled as I hit send. The reply came faster than I expected. You think you can threaten me? You'll come crawling back. You always do. I stared at the screen for a long moment, and then I deleted the message. No tears, no shaking, just calm. Later that night, Donovan knocked on the guest house door. I'd been poring over printed legal documents, highlighting things I didn't fully understand yet, but wanted to. He glanced at the papers spread out on the coffee table and raised an eyebrow. You've been busy, he said. I shrugged, trying to sound nonchalant. I'm just done letting them decide who I am. For the first time since I'd met him, he smiled. Not the polite, restrained kind I'd seen before, but something genuine. That's the first time I've heard you sound like yourself. And for the first time, I didn't feel like prey. I felt like something else entirely. But when you push back against people who thrive on control, they don't take it lightly. A week passed after I'd sent that message to my mother. For a few days, nothing happened. It was almost enough to make me think she'd finally backed off. Every morning, I'd sit on the porch of the guest house with Kaylin, a cup of tea Harriet had started bringing over like clockwork. Watching my son kick his little legs on a blanket while the soft spring breeze rolled in almost made me believe this could be our life. Quiet, safe, ours. That illusion shattered with a knock at the door. I wiped my hands on my jeans and opened it, expecting Harriet with her usual sassy one-liner. Instead, a man in a suit stood there holding a large envelope. "Kaylin Price?" he asked flatly. "Yes?" He handed me the papers and didn't wait for me to invite him in. "You've been served," he said, before walking back toward his car like this was just another Tuesday. My hands shook as I tore open the envelope. It didn't take long to understand. Marvette had filed for grandparent visitation rights. I felt the floor drop out from under me. "She's trying to take him from me," I whispered to no one. My knees almost buckled. I clutched Kaylin, who'd started fussing like he could feel my fear, and sank onto the couch, staring at the words that made my stomach churn. By the time I clocked in at Southern Bites that afternoon, my head was still spinning. I moved on autopilot, taking orders, refilling coffee cups, smiling when I needed to. But inside, I was unraveling. And then Thessaly walked in. She didn't even pretend she was there for food. She marched straight up to the counter, her heels clicking like gunshots, and made sure every diner heard her. "Look at you," she drawled, loud enough for the room to go quiet. "You think you're better than us now? Sleeping your way into luxury? Serving eggs like some wannabe princess?" I froze. Every eye turned toward me. My cheeks burned, but I kept my voice steady. "Please leave." "Oh, so polite," she mocked. "Guess money buys manners, huh?" I turned away, refusing to give her the show she wanted. Walking to the back felt like wading through cement. My manager offered me a sympathetic glance, but didn't interfere. Thessaly always knew how to make me small, and she'd just done it in front of a room full of strangers. When I got home, I didn't go to the living room. I didn't even take off my shoes. I locked myself in the bathroom and sank to the floor. Kaylin was asleep in his crib, and I prayed he stayed that way while I pressed my forehead against my knees and let the sobs come. My mother's voice echoed in my mind. "You'll come crawling back." Maybe she was right. Maybe I couldn't do this. A knock at the door startled me. "Kaylin?" Donovan's voice was calm but firm. "You've been quiet all day. What happened?" I didn't want to tell him. I didn't want to admit how broken I felt. But when I opened the door, tears streaking my face, I saw something in his eyes, not pity, but understanding. "They served me," I said hoarsely. "She filed for visitation, and Thessaly humiliated me at work. I don't know how much more I can take." He didn't try to sugarcoat it. "They're trying to rattle you, and it's working." "What do I do?" My voice cracked. He crouched to meet my eyes. "If you want to fight them, you need to do it smart. No impulsive moves, no reacting to their games. I can introduce you to my attorney. He'll walk you through your options, but you have to decide. Are you ready for this fight? Because it's not going to be easy." I wiped my face, inhaled deeply, and nodded. If they wanted a war, they just started one. I'd been reacting my whole life. It was time to learn how to strike first. The words swirled in my head for days after Donovan said them. I'd repeated them while washing bottles, folding laundry, even when Kaylin giggled as if he had no idea how much his little life had shifted mine. But that morning, staring out the kitchen window of the guest house with the sun cutting across the dew-streaked grass, I decided. Enough waiting to see what they'd do next. "They want me scared," I murmured to myself. "I won't give them that satisfaction." Harriet came by with a basket of fresh muffins. She didn't say much at first. She rarely did unless she sensed I needed a push. "You've been quiet," she said finally, watching me cradle Kaylin. That's dangerous quiet. That's thinking quiet. I managed a half smile. I have a lot to figure out. She stepped closer, putting a hand on my shoulder. Baby, you're stronger than they know. They've spent your whole life convincing you otherwise. But I see it. Donovan sees it too. Don't you forget it. Her words sat heavy in my chest, mixing with the steady beat of my own resolve. I looked down at Kaylin, who tugged absently at the yellow knit blanket like it was his anchor to the world. I'll protect you, I whispered into his hair, no matter what it takes. By mid-morning, Donovan knocked on the door. Ready? He asked. I nodded, holding Kaylin tighter than I needed to as we walked to his car. The drive downtown felt longer than it should have, every traffic light lingering like it wanted to test me. I kept running through what I'd say, what I'd ask. I'd never been in an attorney's office before. People like me avoided lawyers because it usually meant trouble we couldn't afford. But this wasn't just about me anymore. The building was sleek and intimidating, the kind of place that made you sit up straighter without meaning to. Donovan's presence helped. He walked like he belonged, like nothing in the world could touch him. I wondered if I could ever feel that way. Kaylin, Donovan said gently as we waited in the reception area, Hargrove is one of the best. He'll lay out the path, but you'll choose how far you want to go. I nodded, more to myself than to him. When the receptionist called us back, I felt my pulse in my ears. Mr. Hargrove stood as we entered, a tall man in his 60s with silver hair and the kind of posture that said he'd spent decades watching people unravel in front of him. Ms. Price, he greeted, extending a hand. Please sit. Donovan filled me in, but I want to hear it from you. I recounted everything. My mother leaving Kaylin in the rain, the humiliation at the diner, the papers I'd been served. My voice wavered at points, but I didn't cry. I was done crying in front of people who could use it against me. Hargrove listened without interruption, then folded his hands. This isn't about visitation, he said plainly. It's leverage. Your mother doesn't want time with your son. She wants control of you. That's what this petition is. The room seemed to shrink around me. So what can I do? You can do more than react, he said. You can file for a protective order based on what she did. Leaving your son out in the storm is neglect. You can document every interaction, every threat. If you want to counter, I can build a case that shifts the balance of power back to you. I glanced at Donovan, who gave me a subtle nod like he already knew my answer. Do it, I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. File the order. Hargrove didn't flinch. We'll get it started today. And Kaylin, don't engage with her. No matter what she sends you, let me handle it. Walking out of that office, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Taller, heavier in the best way, like my feet were finally planted. Donovan didn't say much in the car, but I caught the slight curve of a smile as he drove. That evening, I sat at the small desk in the guest house while Kaylin slept, flipping through the copies of the paperwork Hargrove had given me. My hands trembled less now. I wasn't just bracing for impact anymore. I was bracing to hit back. The buzz of my phone cut through the quiet. An unknown number. I opened the message. You think you're untouchable? Watch your back. My blood ran cold. I didn't need a signature to know who it was from. I set the phone down without replying. Donovan found me staring at the screen when he came by to check on us. I showed him the message. They're rattled, he said simply. That's good. It means you're winning. I swallowed hard. It means the war has really started. I wasn't their victim anymore. I was their opponent. But when you corner people like my mother, they don't back down. They come for blood. The courthouse smelled like old paper and polished wood, a strange mix of permanence and performance. As Donovan, Mr. Hargrove, and I walked through the wide glass doors, I felt every eye on me, even if they weren't actually looking. My stomach twisted so tight I thought I might be sick, but I kept my chin up. This was my fight now. Marvette and Thessaly were already there, sitting on a bench like they owned the place. They were dressed for church. Marvette in a lavender suit with pearls, Thessaly in a pastel dress that probably cost more than 3 of my paychecks at the diner. They looked like they were there to be admired, not judged. As I walked past them, Marvette leaned just close enough for me to hear. "You'll never take my grandson from me," she whispered, her voice dripping with venom masked as righteousness. I froze for half a second, but Donovan's hand gently touched my back, guiding me forward. "Don't," he muttered under his breath. I didn't. Inside the courtroom, the air felt heavy. Marvette sat across from me at the long wooden table, her lawyer, an older man with the same smug air she carried, shuffling papers like this was routine. Thessaly perched beside her, eyes darting between me and the judge's bench, with a smirk that made my blood boil. The hearing began, and Marvette's lawyer wasted no time attacking. "Your Honor," he started, his voice smooth, rehearsed. "We are here because Ms. Price," he gestured toward me like I was some criminal on display, "is unstable. She is financially dependent on a man who is not her husband, living in his guest house with her child. My client has deep concerns about the environment her grandson is being raised in." It only got worse from there. Thessaly testified next, lying through her teeth without even blinking. "I've seen her leave the baby unattended," she said, hand pressed to her chest like she was a martyr. "She doesn't take care of him the way a mother should." Every word hit like a slap. My hands trembled under the table, but I didn't interrupt. I wanted to scream that they were liars, that they had no idea what I'd been through. But Donovan's words echoed in my head. No impulsive moves, no reacting to their games. When it was our turn, Hargrove stood slowly, deliberately, like he had all the time in the world. "Your Honor," he said, his tone calm but cutting. "Let's not get lost in character assassination. We are here because my client is protecting her child from the very people who endangered him." He handed the judge a set of photos. My breath caught when I saw them. Kaylin, soaked and screaming on that porch, his tiny yellow blanket plastered to his skin with rain. The photos I'd taken that night before I ran. "This," Hargrove continued, "is what happened under their care. This is why Ms. Price is seeking protection." The judge's expression shifted as she flipped through the images, her voice firm. "Ms. Brooks," she said to Marvette, "is this accurate?" Marvette's composure cracked, just for a moment. "That's taken out of context," she stammered. But it was too late. The righteous mask had slipped. When it was my turn to speak, my hands still shook, but my voice didn't. "My mother doesn't want to see my son," I said, looking directly at the judge. "She wants to control me, and I won't let her." The words didn't just hang in the air. They settled there, heavy and undeniable. By the time the hearing ended, I couldn't read the judge's face. But I didn't need to. I'd seen Marvette's. She'd lost ground, and she knew it. In the hallway, Marvette lunged toward me, her heels clicking hard against the tile. "You think you've won?" she hissed. "You'll always be nothing." I didn't flinch. I stepped closer, so close I could see the lines in her carefully powdered face. "Then why are you so scared of me now?" I said, my voice calm, deliberate. Her mouth opened like she wanted to spit fire, but nothing came out. Thessaly grabbed her arm, muttering something, and Donovan pulled me away before it escalated. That night, sitting in the quiet of the guest house, Donovan handed me a cup of tea and sat across from me. "You didn't just defend yourself today," he said. "You made her afraid." I let out a long breath, staring at Kaylin sleeping in his crib. "Good," I said. "Let her know I'm done being afraid of her." For the first time, I didn't just survive my mother. I defeated her. But victory doesn't erase the scars. It just reminds you why you survived. A month passed, and the quiet felt strange at first, like an empty room after everyone has left. But gradually, I let myself settle into it. Mornings no longer started with dread pressing on my chest. Instead, I woke to the sound of Kalen's little feet padding against the wooden floor, his giggles carrying through the house as Harriet hummed some old gospel tune in the kitchen. That morning, the sun broke through the curtains, spilling gold across Donovan's garden. Kalen toddled through the rows of flowers, clutching a dandelion like it was treasure. I watched from the porch, sipping tea Harriet had left for me. For the first time in years, peace didn't feel like something borrowed, it felt like mine. The restraining order had been granted 2 weeks ago, and just like that, Marvette's visitation petition disappeared. Hargrove told me it wasn't surprising. Abusers rarely want a court's full attention when their own behavior is in the spotlight. Thessaly had her own way of lashing out, posting bitter messages online. "Ungrateful brat," one read, "living off handouts, acting like a victim." I didn't bother responding. Let her scream into the void. I wouldn't hear her anymore. Still, some things deserved closure. I stopped by Southern Bites one afternoon, walking through the familiar bell-jingling door. Mrs. Lorraine, who'd quietly offered me extra shifts when I needed them, looked up from the register. "You okay, baby?" she asked, eyes soft but knowing. "I'm getting there," I said with a small smile, "and I just wanted to thank you for everything." She nodded, squeezing my hand across the counter. "You walked through fire. Be proud you made it out." Driving back, I realized how much lighter I felt. Like pieces of myself I'd lost along the way had finally found their way home. That night, I sat by the window with my journal, Kalen asleep in his crib beside me. I wrote for the first time not out of desperation, but out of hope. I thought I needed her apology to heal. I don't. My healing is mine now. I wrote about breaking the cycle for Kalen, about never letting him grow up believing love was control or that family meant enduring abuse in silence. Later, my phone buzzed with an out-of-state number. Malik, my little brother. "Hey," I answered, my heart catching. "Hey, Kay." His voice had deepened, but I could still hear the boy who used to trail me around the yard. "I just wanted to say I'm proud of you. I saw what happened in court." Tears stung my eyes. "I'm proud of you too, Malik. You're doing great things." It wasn't reconciliation with Marvette. It didn't erase everything, but reconnecting with him felt like proof that I could still have family, real family, without the pain attached. Later that evening, I picked up the blue blanket, the same one Kalen had been wrapped in the night my mother left him crying in the rain. I held it against my chest, tracing the worn edges. "We made it, baby," I whispered, glancing at him as he slept soundly. "We're not in the rain anymore." It didn't hurt to hold it now. It didn't feel like a wound. It felt like proof. Proof that we survived. The screen door creaked, and Donovan stepped out onto the porch. "You okay out here?" he asked, his voice low, easy. "Yeah," I said, setting the blanket on my lap. "Just thinking." He leaned on the railing beside me, watching the sun set behind the trees. Kalen's laughter floated from the yard, Harriet chasing him with a plastic ball. "You've come a long way," Donovan said. I nodded. "They left me in the storm," I murmured. "But I built my own shelter, and in it we are finally safe." The air was still, but for once, I didn't feel the need to fill it with words. "The storm didn't break me, it made me